I'm looking around our elected officials these days, and I got to tell you, I'm a little bit dispirited. I'm a little bit discouraged. Not just with the Democrats, with the Republicans, maybe especially with the Republicans. I look around at a lot of Republicans, I think, with Republicans like this, who needs Democrats? It's Republicans doing the Democrats' jobs for them. Handful of good guys out there. One of the good guys, Chip Roy, congressman for Texas's 21st congressional district, who just spoke out pretty vigorously against a measure undertaken by a lot of House Republicans that I think a lot of people don't even know about. Did you know that last week, House Democrats, with the support of a lot of House Republicans, voted to make women sign up for the draft, for the selective service? I didn't get a whole lot of headlines, but it's pretty shocking to me. Here to help us make sense of it, Chip Roy. Chip, thank you so much for being here.
Michael, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
So, Chip, I'll get right to it. I understand. I don't know a ton about how this bill was passed through the House. I understand it was part of a broader defense bill, and a lot of Republicans think they're getting squeezed on the defense bill, and well, we got to vote so we look like we support the military. But it just seems to me, any bill that involves drafting America's daughters it's just unacceptable. It's just off the table.
Yeah, I agree completely. And look, what we're talking about for your listeners is the National Defense Authorization Act. It is true that annually, on a bipartisan basis, we try to come together to pass that bill to authorize our national defense. It is the single most important and the primary function of our government. We all agree on that. Unfortunately, for years, my Republican colleagues have allowed garbage to get attached to and voted through along with the National Defense Authorization Act. A lot of the reasons we have all this woke garbage in the military now, right? The chief diversity officers, the critical race theory implication, the academies that are teaching this kind of stuff. The reason that we have a lot of things passed that we disagree with is because of that. We have Republicans, frankly, who are unwilling to challenge the defense industrial complex, unwilling to say to their voters, hey, I want to vote for a pay raise for the troops. I want to make sure they've got what they need, but I'm not going to give them a Christmas tree to pass their wish list of leftist policies using you as the excuse. And that's exactly what they did last week. The National Defense Authorization Act was passed with $25 additional billion on top of the administration ask, despite the fact that Austin and Milley have not been held accountable, despite the fact there's been no actual resolution of what they did in Afghanistan and $85 billion of equipment in the hands of the Taliban. And they included a draft our daughters provision. What does that mean? If this becomes law, then the law will change such that women will have to register for selective service, as men currently do, and they will have to do so immediately. It'll have an immediate effect if this becomes law. Now, here's the problem with that. We all know, you and I know, any average listener knows, that's absurd. It's wrong. And by the way, we should have debated it. It should have been in the light of day, not passed an amendment with 135 Republicans in the House, 2/3 of Republicans voting for it. Final point. 5 years ago, your tax money, my tax money, or borrowed money, however you want to look at it, spent $36 million in the Department of Defense to study the effectiveness of women in combat. You will be shocked to learn that they found that all male units perform at a 70% proficient level relative to mixed units. And that's, by the way, being conducted by your woke military. I think we all know the truth. We shouldn't have done this. I oppose it. There is a chance to stop it now because it will go to the Senate. The Senate will mess with it and we'll end up in a conference. We should strip it out. There are other bad provisions like red flag laws for our men and women in uniform, green garbage, woke garbage. But this has to come out, this drafting of our daughters.
I think you're exactly right. And you point out something important here, which is the argument from efficiency. You know, it's the kind of utilitarian argument of, well, the left tells us that men and women are exactly the same. People with even two brain cells to rub together know that is obviously not the case. We know that men physically are just bigger and stronger and faster than women. That's just the way it is. And so it is going to diminish military readiness. But then there's the other argument, beyond the utilitarian kind of calculations. There's just this question, is this right or is it wrong? Is it just? Is it good for a country to draft our daughters into fighting our wars for us and getting shot by some jihadi overseas, what the hell are we even fighting for? This is so perverse. It is such a sick country and that would do this sort of thing. And it just demonstrates such a lack of judgment on the part of Republicans who are doing this. Look, very little scandalizes me anymore, okay? I have fairly low expectations for a lot of Congress and for even some Republicans. But this is a new low even for me, and I totally agree with you. This is non-negotiable. Take this stupid provision out of the law.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Last night I joked on Tucker when we were talking about this, and he was incredulous. He was like, what are you talking about? Draft our daughters. This is insane. And I said that my wife has said that if I voted for this, she'd go out and campaign against me because she's a rational woman who understands how important this is. Now, look, I'm so glad you just framed it the way you just framed it. I make the utilitarian argument sometimes because I want people to have the data because they sit there and they argue and they want to be able to say, oh, things are all equal. But look, bottom line is, what kind of a man would allow his government to, by force, conscript his daughter, his wife, his sister, his mother? Can you imagine sitting at your house and your wife opens up the envelope and she goes, oh, my lottery number got picked. I'm going off to war. And then you go, oh, don't worry. Trust the government not to put your daughter into a foxhole. Really? Trust the same government that just left $85 billion of equipment in the hands of the Taliban. Trust the government that refuses to secure our border. Trust the government that is stepping into Texas and saying we can't have monoclonal antibody treatments out of their infinite wisdom to ration it. They're stepping in and saying, oh, sorry, you must vaccinate every business with employees more than 100 people through an unconstitutional, unlawful order by the President of the United States. Trust that government not to draft my daughter and put her into a foxhole. I'm sorry, go to hell. I'm going to protect my daughter. Of
course. And you mention all of these other awful provisions that we've gotten in these previous NDAAs, these defense funding bills. And that includes all the woke military stuff. That includes the chief diversity officer. It includes all the CRT, the critical race theory stuff. And I know a lot of Republicans in the past, they say, oh, who cares? Look, we got to fund the military. I don't want to go back to my district and have people run campaign ads against me that say I'm against supporting the troops. So sure, we're going to get a chief diversity officer or some woke. I think Milley is going to dye his hair purple pretty soon and start, marching in the streets. But, it's not that big a deal. Who cares? Well, my answer to that is, the left cares. The left clearly cares. They're going to hold military funding hostage to these provisions, not because they're trivial, but because they have real significant effects. And you just think, I agree that some of them are more important than others. But if you're not going to take a stand on drafting our freaking daughters, then you're not going to take a stand on anything. I'm not sure that you're capable of standing.
Let me give you the logic of your average member of Congress, okay? One, I had a member of Congress colleague who the other day said, well, don't worry, they'll never draft our daughters. And then literally follow that up with, but if we need to have a draft to be able to combat China because they might have 20 or 30 million men, so then we'd have to draft daughters. I'm like, well, wait a minute. You just said that we won't ever have a draft, but then you said that we might have to have a draft. Another guy said, well, look, I had to vote for the NDAA because you know why? Because there's a provision in there now that will allow members of the military to be honorably discharged and prevent them from being dishonorably discharged if they choose not to be vaccinated. So hold on a second. You're still going to allow them to be forced out of the military because they refuse to be vaccinated. Maybe they've got natural immunity. And your big reason for saying we should draft daughters, pass a red flag law, pass a bloated NDAA is to give them the benefit of a honorable discharge. What kind of a freaking clown show is this Congress, and why are 2/3 of Republicans jumping right in bed with it? I don't understand it.
It's just such cowardice. It's such a lack of judgment. It's a new low, I think. And so you have given us a little glimmer of hope, though, here, Chip. You've said that it's not as though this is the law now. It's passed out of the House, but you've still got a 50-50 Senate, but the Democrats have the tie-breaking vote. Still, you have a couple sort of moderate, quasi-moderate Democrats, Kyrsten Sinema in Arizona and Joe Manchin in West Virginia. It's going to go into conference. You're going to maybe be able to strip these things out. So One, what is the likelihood they take this draft our daughters provision out? And two, how do we encourage our elected representatives to do that?
My experience, both as a member of Congress, as a staffer, Senator Cruz's chief of staff, a lawyer in Senate Judiciary, is that when the people burn the phones down, these guys run to the corners. They go running crying, and they go, okay, whatever you say. And you know what? That's good. That's the way our system's supposed to work.
Right.
In a sense, I'd like to see better leadership. Burn the phones down. Tell your members of Congress, you don't want your daughters, sisters, moms drafted, that you want to stop that. We can stop it if we force them to take it out of conference. Republicans claim, oh, don't worry, we'll fix this in the future. Fix it now. Don't give Democrats their show win here of equity when it's absolutely absurd. Kill it now. We have the votes to kill the Defense Authorization Act. We should kill it for this reason. We should kill it for giving it more money without accountability for Milley or Austin. We should kill it for the red flag law provisions. Take all of that stuff out in conference, force them for some accountability. The American people need to speak and let their members know that they have no business supporting this bill.
I think you're absolutely right. And I do think, one, I agree that congressmen and senators don't like it when the phones ring off the hooks, and so might be a good way to pressure them. But also, conservatives have overcome greater odds, actually, on this very issue. People forget about it now. But, many decades ago, the ERA, the so-called Equal Rights Amendment, it was going to pass. It was guaranteed. It had Republican support, another bunch of squishes back then. It had a ton of Democrat support. And basically just one woman stopped this. Phyllis Schlafly, great, strong, conservative woman. She organized a campaign and she galvanized women across the country on this issue. Don't draft our daughters. Don't abolish same-sex bathrooms. I mean, actually, a lot of the same things that Democrats are trying to do today. And she stopped that awful amendment.
I agree, absolutely. And right now you've got some groups, Concerned Women for America, have scored against it. The Family Research Council has scored against it. On the gun side, Gun Owners of America has scored against it. We've got other groups that are starting to poke their head up. I know that the Heritage Foundation and others have raised concerns about this provision. I hope that there'll be more noise, more groups shining a light on this. And for any of your listeners out there, just make sure your members of Congress know how you feel about it. And again, your argument was the best one. What in the world are we thinking? What kind of a man are you if you look at your daughter or a woman in your family and believe the power of government should be used to conscript her into military service? I can't imagine anything allowing that to occur.
That's right. And to look at what's happened, especially over the past year and a half, though you can look a lot further back, and to believe that if we give this administration, this ruling class, this kind of power, that they're either not going to exercise it or they're going to give it back to us, that is a pipe dream. If you believe that, brother, I got a bridge in Brooklyn to sell you. That is absolutely absurd.
And they want to use this for a larger statement, right? They want this statement, right? They want to completely break down the barriers and say that everybody is the same. They want to say that you're a pregnant person.
That's right. That's right.
They
Chest
literally
feeding.
just make stuff up in the face. And so, buy them this. Stand up for normalcy. Stand up for our life. Stand up for your family. Just stop. It's like our border. Just stand up and secure the border. Stop waiting for Biden to do it. Let's go do it as Texans. Let's go do it as Americans. Let's reclaim our country. It's time.
That's right. You know, a lot of times you'll hear the squishes and the cowards say, well, this is not the hill I want to die. Do you want to die on this hill? I say, first of all, I don't intend to die on any hill. Second of all, if you give up all the hills, then you got nowhere else to stand. Then you've given up the entire battlefield. Chip, I really appreciate your clarifying this, calling people's attention to it in the House of Representatives, and being one of the few guys over there that still seems to have a spine. I hope you live a long life and you donate your body to science and your spine to the GOP, because you've really...
Well, Michael, there are a few others here that are standing up and fighting. We're getting more of them every day. The American people show confidence here. We can win these fights and win more, but I just don't want it to be about Republicans wanting power for the sake of it. Yeah. We need to do something with it, and we need to stand up for this country. Thanks, Michael.
We need to use it for the right stuff and for goodness, justice, and the American way.